this is the moment that reveals the hideous cruelty of Suella Braverman, but not just her, the absolutely grotesque and inhumane and ridiculous asylum system that we have in this country. Just watch her flounder and thrash around from questions from, and I must emphasise, a Conservative MP.
Increasing numbers coming across the channel. Let's do a bit of role play. I'm a 16-year-old orphan from an East African country escaping a war zone and religious persecution. And I have a sibling legally in the United Kingdom at the moment. What is a safe and legal route for me to come to the United Kingdom?
Well, we have... you're fleeing which country, sorry?
Any African country.
Any African country. Well...
Be any continent, but let's say any African country. I don't want to name one because then their Prime Minister might have a go at me for demonising their population. So let's just theoretically talk about an African country which is going through a period of turbulence and which is persecuting its citizens, including an innocent 16-year-old like me.
Well, we have an asylum system and people can put in applications for asylum.
How would I do that?
Well, you can do it through the safe and legal routes that we have. We have offered 390,000 places to people seeking safety from various countries around the world.
Well, I'm not Syrian, I'm not Afghan, I'm not Ukrainian, not any of those specific schemes. The Dub scheme is historic. What scheme's open to me?
Well, if you are able to get to the UK, you are able to put in an application for asylum.
But I would only enter the UK illegally then, wouldn't I?
Well, that would, if you put in your application for asylum upon arrival, that would be the process that you enter.
How could I arrive in the UK if I didn't have permission to get onto an aircraft legally to arrive in the UK?
Let me just invite other colleagues if there's anything they want to add.
I mean, you could...
This is the point. This is the point. They've got rid of the safe, legal routes. Asylum claims actually lower now than they were in the early 2000s. It's just more and more coming over the channel. Why? Because the government have systematically clamped down on the safe, legal routes that people fleeing terrible oppression and terrible suffering can come to this country. There are exceptions, sure. They made exceptions, for example, for Ukrainian refugees. My brother is amongst those British households who've taken in a Ukrainian family, and I applaud my brother and all those who've done that. And of course the suffering of Ukraine matters, and of course people who are able to do so should welcome Ukrainian refugees. But there are people from other countries around the earth, and dare I say it, who are not white, who are denied asylum and don't have legal and safe routes for coming here. You know what's so grotesque? We have refugees from, for example, Afghanistan and Iraq. Does anyone need a history lesson? I don't think so, about the recent history of Iraq and Afghanistan, because, as you may recall, our own governments have something to do with the violent turmoil in both countries. In the case of Afghanistan, a 2-decade-long conflict in which I must say, by the way, that there are serious allegations of terrible human rights abuses by Western forces, which helped fuel the rise of the Taliban, the return of the Taliban, who obviously took Kabul again last year. Iraq, plunged into blood and chaos by our country, but there are also various dictatorships across the world, which our country is complicit in, and also the history of colonialism, which isn't some distant past. There are people alive who lived under British colonialism, and the divide and rule policies and the legacy in general of colonial horrors has a lot to do with a lot of the suffering that exists today. We have this huge responsibility, but we don't pull our weight. Instead, the vast majority of refugees are in the poorest countries with the least ability to look after those in desperate need. You know, whether it be Lebanon, for example, or Turkey, much poorer countries than our own. And of the European countries, we take in far less than, say, Germany or France. This is grotesque. It is absolutely grotesque. And the fact, you know, they managed to get away so long, actually, and this is what I find actually so grotesque, and I know I keep saying grotesque, but it is grotesque, about this whole situation. It took a Tory MP to take to pieces the government's asylum policy. Why haven't any national media outlets or broadcast journalists who get the chance to interrogate the likes of Suella Braverman, why haven't they made this point themselves before? That whatever ministers say of, oh, well, they're coming here illegally, they're criminals and all the rest of it, and they need to come here by legal routes, they haven't been taken apart on that central deceit properly until this moment, until a Conservative MP, Tim Loughton, did it. What does that tell us about our democracy? It should not fall to Conservative MPs to scrutinise the government. Why wasn't it Keir Starmer? Why wasn't it the Labour front bench? Why haven't they torn them to pieces? I tell you why, because they're too scared that they'll look soft on asylum seekers and refugees. That's what they're terrified of. It shouldn't fall, as I've said, to a backbench Tory MP. What a failing of our democracy. And the consequences of the failure of our democracy is people suffer and die. That's what happens. People drown in the Channel because we've clamped down on safe and legal routes and then we pretend we haven't. Very angry about the whole situation, as you can tell. Needed to get that out of my system. Please like, subscribe. I'll see you next time.